it was bound to happen to someone. And I suppose we were one of the first kind of restaurants to be named as having a contact case. And we're out, I suppose, in the papers and so forth, on all the websites. So it's a bit alarming to see yourself up in that.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. As the cluster in Sydney's northern beaches has shown, life can change in the blink of an eye. With increased cases of COVID-19 came heavier restrictions right across Greater Sydney, and other states closing their borders to the residents of it. What impact will this have? And will this become the norm for the coming year? Doug Fraser is a chef and co-owner of Lovat in Newport on the northern beaches of Sydney. Doug, how are you going?
Good, thanks. Interesting time.
Thanks for joining us. You're up there in the northern beaches and you were firing up for a big Christmas trade and you've had to close the restaurant. How are you feeling at the moment?
At the moment, it's pretty uncertain. We're just trying to deal with what information we get as it comes in. So, yeah, it's a bit hectic at the moment, but we're all fingers crossed we can get open as soon as possible.
You've been open for quite a while since that first lockdown all those months ago. What's the build up to Christmas been like and trade been like before this happened?
Well, we were fairly, pretty new business even before the first lockdown happened. So we never really found our feet, and then obviously the first lockdown happened and we kind of dealt with that the best we could. So since reopening, it's gone really strong, and we were, like everyone else, getting ready for a crazy time of year, employing people, prepping, filling the fridges up, and that pretty just went to nothing overnight.
Were the fridges full when you got news come through about the lockdown?
Yeah, right up to the minute that we had decided we were going to close. We were prepping, getting ready for the busiest day we'd ever had since we've opened, and then had to make the quarter close.
Take us through sort of the last week or so as the build-up has happened and cases started to happen. How did you feel about the area? Did you feel this impending closure?
No, I eat out a lot. Everywhere I've been in the area, everyone does their best to keep within the guidelines, and we were all kind of just not oblivious to it, but we were just going about our normal lives. And certainly in the industry, we were just ready for, everyone to come out and celebrate. And then we kind of got word that something was going on just up the road in Avalon. Had a bit, a close eye on that. And then, Thursday night, we heard that there was a case down the road from us. So we decided, in the interest of everyone's safety, let's just close and see what happens. We made that call late Thursday night, and then we came in on Friday to just tidy up a few things. Then we got a call saying that there'd been a contact with a COVID case at our restaurant. So then everything just changed there, and we had to kind of sit down and work out the best way to go forward.
How did you feel at that moment?
To be honest, I wasn't surprised because seeing how many cases were popping up and around, it was bound to happen to someone. And I suppose we were one of the first kind of restaurants to be named as having a contact case. And we're out, I suppose, in the papers and so forth, on all the websites. So it was a bit alarming to see yourself up in that. But then, only a couple of days later, almost every restaurant I know is in that list now. So it's just commonplace.
What's the anxiety that you feel? Is it the fact that there's cases and, you or your staff or your family may get the virus, or is it more about the lockdown and impact on the business and the sustainability of that?
My first concern was always going to be the community, our guests, our staff, and making sure everyone's all right. After that, as a business owner, it's really concerning because with the first lockdown, it did take them a while to come out with a few relief strategies, but we did hear that they would close us down. So we couldn't reopen, and we were going to get rent relief. We were going to get some government grants, and we're going to get JobKeeper and all these things. Now at Christmas time, having none of that and having to pay all the bills anyway, it is pretty stressful.
Christmas is renowned for a time that restaurants do really well, but restaurants struggle in their first year, and the statistics aren't pretty, let alone when there's a pandemic on. How important was this Christmas trade for you?
For us, we'd been doing okay, as far as restaurants go, and we're very grateful for all the help that we got. But this was really a chance for us to kind of move ahead, build a great team, push ahead with the new menu items, and really push forward. But it's all come to nothing now.
There's been some news overnight, and it's not as bad as what could have been. There's a lot of people tested and not many cases found. How are you feeling about that and the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean it's great that everyone's get tested. I mean, I know myself and probably yourself, went in those lines for hours to get tested, and it's good to see everyone getting tested to make sure that we're doing everything we need to be safe. Um, I just hope that whatever we do, it really knocks it out, and we can kind of move on to some sort of normal life as soon as possible.
The numbers in Australia are incredibly low compared to what we see in the States and in Europe. How do you feel about the situation in Australia? Are you confident that we'll get on top of things? And what's the new year looking like in that regard?
In terms of how I feel, I'm confident that everyone that I know is doing the right thing, and we have a great community around us, and everyone I can see and hear of is doing the right thing. So I'm confident that as a local community, which that's all I can really gauge by, we're all going to do the right thing to get through this. As a country, I hope that everyone stays safe and follows suit. The new year is a crazy thing to think about, that it's only a week or so away, and I don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, we could get the call tomorrow that we're shut again for 3 months. We don't know. I don't hope it doesn't happen, but it's just playing it day by day. We've put plans into place, but they could change in half an hour's time.
We've seen lots of people overseas refusing to wear masks and refusing to accept the virus, but footage of the northern beaches shows the streets pretty quiet. What's it feel like in the suburbs at the moment where you are?
It's crazy compared to a week ago, where you could go down to Manly or whatever and see people lining up to get into venues and so forth. And now I'm sitting in the restaurant now, and I can probably see 3 or 4 people, maybe maximum, walking around the street, and everyone's wearing a mask. I mean, it's good to see that everyone's taking this seriously, because the sooner we knock this out, the better.
As you mentioned a bit earlier, Lovat's only a fairly new restaurant. Can you tell us about how that started and what you're doing there?
Yeah, so we opened, what was it, last July, and we took the restaurant over from Alessandro Pavoni of Omeggio. He had a bit on his plate, and he had a few new venues coming up, and he, very graciously offered the restaurant to me, and I took it very happily. Me and the head chef Dan, we kind of just sat down and said, well, what do we want to serve here? What are we going to do? And it was always going to be what food that we wanted to eat, and be in the environment that we wanted to be in. And that's kind of what we've done. It was a slow start. There was a few really quiet nights, but it's been growing ever since, and we're very grateful for where we are now.
Give us an example of food that you like to eat and cook. Do you have some dishes on the menu that really typify what you do?
Yeah. So one thing that we kind of, is us and a bit odd, I suppose, the way it sounds anyway, is we do a kind of fish chowder, a fish pie chowder type thing, which is, typically a white sauce based thing, but we make it with kombu. My mum's Japanese. I grew up with all those sort of flavors. So we use a lot of kombu. We use a lot of soy in a lot of what we do, but it is kind of European cooking techniques, and plated, the typical mod Oz style way.
When did you first get interested in food, and what led you to a career in hospitality?
Well, I was really shit at school, and I hated it, and the teachers hated me being there. So after year 10, I decided, well, whether I decided or got pushed, we kind of left school. And, there's only 2 things I was really interested in, was kind of music and cooking. And I ended up starting an apprenticeship at a few odd places, and then ended up applying for a job with Matt Moran at Aria in 1999 for the new opening of that, and that kind of changed my life and my perspective of food. I was really really lucky to be there at that time with those people and have the guidance of people like Simon Sandel and Matt Moran. It was bloody hard work, and I remember being on the veg section with Paul Baker, sweating in places that we didn't know that could sweat. But it was amazing. It was an amazing time.
Take us back to then. What was it like in the kitchen as someone that was so young? Do you remember any of the dishes that you had to do?
Mashed potato. I think most people that have worked in Aria would remember doing a heap of mash and bending your fingers backwards on the moolie trying to get the blasted through. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it was really new to me. I'd never worked in that sort of environment before, so it was just all eye-opening. And I remember eating a mussel for the first time, and I'd seen them before in the movies or TV, and I just thought that was amazing. Just so many moments like that happening every day, and having the guidance of Simon Sandals there explaining things. Nothing was ever too hard for him to. He would always stop and say, "This is why we do this," and so forth. And it was just a really great time to be in the industry. It was a different industry back then, not that it was forever ago, but I don't know if it's like that anymore in terms of. It was just a bit different back then.
You mentioned the influence of your mother's cooking when you were younger, and obviously Matt Moran and Simon Sandel as well. What's been some of the influences through your career after your apprenticeship that really defined you as a chef?
Well, after working at Aria, like all chefs at the time, I wanted to go work in England because that's kind of where it was all at. And I was very, very lucky to end up getting a job at Le Manoir Cassaisons with Raymond Blanc, or for Raymond Blanc. And that was like being in the army. Yeah, got my ass kicked there. It was hard work. And then lucky enough to then move to Scotland and work for Gordon Ramsay at his restaurant Amaryllis. And again, that was really eye-opening and hard work.
You came back to Australia and worked in many venues, but you've also owned quite a few of your own places, and they've always been on the north side of the harbour. Why have you? What led you to open restaurants on the north side?
I like the people. I like the beach. I like just like the way of life up here. Good people, relaxed, safe. But I just I just love the people. I love the area.
Tell us about the first restaurant you opened and the challenges involved in that. It was up in Narrabeen, I believe, and you got the sort of attention of some critics at the time as well. What was that experience like?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy, to be honest. I was thinking back, it's almost 10 years ago. I was probably a bit too young and, yeah, a bit young and dumb to do it. But I just kind of, I had a young daughter and I just figured I need to do something in my life. So I took it on and I just did anything and everything I could to make it work. It was a really good experience. We did some great things there. There's a lot of things that I've, looking back, I wish I did there as well. But, leaving and selling there was a really positive part of my life as well. So I look back on that time at Barbudo fondly, but I'm really glad to have the experience. But I'm glad what we're doing now. I feel that we're kind of moved forward and doing something a bit better.
You've opened these venues with your wife. Can you tell us about um, the teamwork involved and running restaurants and how important both of you are to those venues?
Yeah, it's probably the best and worst thing we've ever done is work together. And doing it for 10 plus years, we know where each other's strengths and weaknesses are. Yeah, I mean, I typically take care of the food and all the back of house in terms of doing the payroll and all that kind of stuff. And my wife, Kylie, she looks after the front of house to the floor with our general manager, Matteo, and I suppose the marketing side of the business. So we've kind of found our little lanes, and we try not to cross them because we know there'll be an argument at the end of the day if we do.
People often speak of the eastern suburbs or the inner west for great food in Sydney, but there are some amazing restaurants on the north side, and particularly up where you are. Tell us about the food and the restaurants of that area and what you love about them.
Well, we're a kind of a weird little community here that there's no real competition. We just all like going out to each other's restaurants. So I did some time working with my friend up at Bistro Boulevard in Avalon, and they do great French food. We've got Bert's down the road from us, who, it's one of the best restaurants in Australia. And then you've got, all these other things popping up and down the beaches like Cafe Monaco, which does some great Japanese food. And it's, there's something for everybody, and it's just what you need. What the area needs is that sort of variety, and it's really every base is covered here.
You're very connected with the local restaurateurs and chefs. What are they saying about this situation and what are their concerns?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been really, really lucky to have guidance of the kind of the older school hospitality people in the area. I've got, obviously Alessandro is my landlord here. I've got Bill Dracopoulos, Anna Pavoni, Matt Kemp, and my old boss Hassan Erman. These guys have been really, instrumental in helping me get through this time, and their guidance. At the moment, it's just with the first lockdown, we kind of knew what was coming, and had a bit of a look in America. But with everyone putting out so much for this Christmas period and the uncertainty and how quick it happened, it's just a bit of an unknown. So it's a bit hard to get any answers from anyone. We're just doing our best.
What's the plan at the moment for the restaurant? Are you going to remain closed until you get word that things are okay, or are you looking to do some takeaway?
So first of all, when we had the confirmed case, we closed down, and none of the staff were allowed back into the restaurant or anywhere near it until they had returned a negative test. And so yesterday we put all the food aside and gave that out to the staff so they could at least eat it rather than go in the bin. Did a big deep clean. Later this afternoon, I've got the disinfectant guy coming to spray in his hazmat suit. So that'll clear us, and then the plan is now to do some Christmas packs, and we've been really fortunate to have some great local following to sell some Christmas packs, and we're pretty much sold out of them. And again, like we've planned to open for New Year's Eve, and we're getting all our staff geared up for it and everything. But whether that can happen, I don't know.
It's been a pretty crazy year, and given what happened in Melbourne, and now is happening in Sydney on a much lesser scale, how has it impacted you personally this year?
Personally, I think I've got a few more battle scars, a few kind of more grey hairs. I've learned a lot, but having said that, I've achieved everything I wanted to do when I sat down the start of the year, and I put some goals together. I've achieved all that, and when all this is over, I'll put some more goals down and hopefully achieve them. But personally, it hasn't been fun or easy, but we got there in the end, so far.
You mentioned that you've learned a few things. What are some of the things you've learned this year out of this experience?
Just to engage with the community that you're in, be honest, be upfront. And not that I wasn't like that before, but I feel that it's really reinforced the fact that you need to be upfront with your guests and your staff, what your situation is, and try your best, work your ass off, and hopefully it'll all work out.
Will this experience change what you do at Lovat, and moving into the next year, do you think you'll be a different sort of operator given the circumstances?
Yes and no. I think we will not change in our core values in what we kind of want to deliver to our guests. We want them to have good food, good wine, good service at a reasonable price. That's always what we wanted. Whether we do that in the restaurant or at their house or whatever, that's probably the only thing that's going to change.
What's your hopes over the next period of time, and leading up to Christmas and New Year's? Uh, what are you hoping for from Sydney siders, and in regards to what's going on?
I just hope everyone's safe first, and then we can kind of think about moving forward. I mean, obviously, I run a business, and we need to make money to survive and pay our staff and all that. But I suppose the welfare of the community is probably more important than that. If we don't survive through that, then that's fine. But as long as everyone else is all right, we'll be fine.
What sort of impact do you think this will have long term? The industry is renowned for its low profit margins, and this is a second lockdown for you and the restaurateurs and industry people in your area. What sort of impact do you think that will have long term on establishments?
Well, as far as profitability, it was, being profitable and saying you were a profitable restaurant a year ago when all this salary scandal stuff was going on. It was almost a dirty word to run a profitable restaurant. I think podcasts like this and the general awareness of the struggles that owning a restaurant have, come to light lately, have kind of opened people's eyes to that. Whether they care about it or not, I don't know. But the things are going to have to change. I don't know what and I don't know how, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens when the dust settles on all this.
Well, Doug, I know you've had a pretty tough period of time. Hopefully, you can get those dinner packs out for Christmas and get some money in the door and help your staff and also feed the community. We've really loved having you on Deep in the Weeds today. Good luck with everything. Please keep in touch and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Hux.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.